Let's talk about my involvement in the Onision documentary and why I accepted the interview. But first, let me feed you a full slice of context because you guys know that's how I like to roll. I always imagine there's at least a few people that click on a video not knowing anything about the topic, and I want them to completely understand what's going on once they come out of it, so that's why I like to give context in my videos. Plus, it's always good to have a refresher because so much goes on in the internet and our minds just keep absorbing information every day. So even though some of the stuff happened within the last year, some a little bit over a year ago, it feels like it's been forever ago. After the storytime context, I'll play you guys a recap of a live stream that I did recently talking about this whole thing. It was late 2019 when a number of girls banded together online to speak up against a man who had taken advantage of them at some point in their lives. Onision is someone who has never been afraid to hide the emotional abuse that he causes women, mostly because to him, they are all irrational and he is never wrong. He is simply the most honest YouTuber. The fact machine, if you will. These are all labels he applied to himself, and thus making all of his actions completely justified in his own eyes.
That's why hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people know me to be the most brutally honest YouTuber.
With an already dying channel at this point, the girls hammered it down further as their voices were being heard by new audiences and covered by more YouTubers. It wasn't long until Onision's partner Kai crumbled under pressure and decided to leave social media without ever addressing any of the allegations made about him. Onision would go on to blame the girls and say that they betrayed Kai for the things that they said. Among the YouTubers covering the story was a man called Chris Hansen. Known for his fame and work in the 90s on the show To Catch a Predator, this immediately perked and excited audiences online. Thousands of viewers would join Hansen's weekly show on his YouTube channel as he would interview different people that were victimized by Onision in some way. As shocking and entertaining as the show was to witness, the elements began to fade as Chris Hansen would riddle viewers and victims alike with empty promises. He would frequently mention FBI involvement as if some sort of criminal justice was to be served. Although he undoubtedly brought extra attention to the story itself, people began to question whether the motive was for his own benefit when they learned that he wanted to bring the story to television. In June of 2020, Chris Hansen interviewed with Mail magazine and stated that he saw his YouTube channel as a way of incubating stories before bringing them to TV. Following the statement, the article stated that Investigation Discovery bought the rights to the Onision story, which led the masses to criticize Chris Hansen as they felt they had been misled. In response, Chris Hansen tweeted out, "No one is quote-unquote selling rights to a story to a network. That's not even how it works. And why would you not explore expanding an important story to a wider audience? Shouldn't the survivors' voices and the quest for justice go beyond YouTube?" His response landed distastefully considering what was written on the article. I mean, sure, the concept of selling the Onision story sounds weird, but at the same time, the way that this is written at the very least implies that you're gaining some sort of monetary profit from pushing the story to television. I personally felt that his response was almost condescending, so I responded to him on Twitter and said, "I'm not selling the Onision story, but even if I was, wouldn't that be a good thing? More people could hear the story I'm not selling." That's kind of how the tweet read to me. It just felt strange to defend the idea of getting the story to TV while trying to catch people on semantics. Anyways, he didn't like that and blocked me. Weeks later, Mail magazine edited the article to say, Hansen says he signed a deal with Investigation Discovery to do a series about the Onision story. Which really only proves how Chris Hansen was focusing on semantics, and the outrage is still somewhat justified. I mean, he signed a deal with Investigation Discovery. Did he sign that for free? By this point, Chris Hansen had already lost major trust among viewers, YouTubers, and victims alike. Many of the people that he had interviewed would go on to denounce him, with some even requesting for their interviews to be taken down. Eventually, some of the girls would go on to say that they spoke to the producers of the documentary and they were told that their stories could possibly be shared to some degree even if they did not agree to be on the show. Later, it was revealed that 2 girls had accepted interviews for the documentary despite an internal conversation between them all agreeing not to do it. This led some of the girls to express their anger on Twitter towards the ones that did accept and caused further distaste against the documentary. Regina responded by explaining how they preferred to be in control of their own story if it was to be told at all, and said that they felt excluded from the group. Shallow responded by saying she wasn't on it, and that people were trying to break into her house, wanting details about the show. What? Well, that was definitely an awkward response since, she's definitely in the documentary. Anyways, me having personal history with Shiloh, I was happy to see her get called out for the fake that she is. I did a live stream with some cervezas and I reacted to the tweets made by everyone. Sometime after this, I was contacted by the show's consultant. I was confused and surprised to be told that the show's premise would be completely different than what was being regurgitated online. I was told that Chris Hansen would not be a host and had no editorial control, that I would be able to express what I wanted about Chris Hansen. More importantly, I was assured that the girls that did not want to be on the show would not appear on the show. Despite being told this, due to everything I had been hearing, it was difficult to immediately trust them, especially because they wanted to do the interview almost immediately after contacting me. I could also tell that they were stressed from the public perception of the show, but that's not my problem. Although it certainly felt like it could become my problem if I signed on. The idea alone that I would have to defend myself simply for participating in this project was kind of stressful. I mean, Repzion, one of the YouTubers that's been going against Onision for the longest amount of time, made a video on Twitter and on YouTube talking about why he's against going on the show. I had lots of questions and wanted to vet them thoroughly, but ultimately left the communication line on pause as I was already behind on a video that was actually covering Onision. As time passes, Repzion hits me up and tells me that he was also approached. Repzion found himself in a similar dilemma where he was confused because ultimately the documentary didn't seem to step on anybody's toes and he was able to talk about Chris Hansen if he wanted to. He did a live stream to scope out people's opinions and ultimately ended up deciding to not do the interview. The distrust for the documentary is completely understandable. I mean, especially when you consider the fact that the man who pitched the story was Chris Hansen. Not to mention the communication issues that the producers had, not only with the victims, but with myself included. Ultimately, the women that dealt with Onision and were approached for the documentary were outraged that the documentary would proceed as they believed it would discuss their stories after refusing to participate. It seems that nobody really understood what was going on, which, typically this is a good thing for TV shows, movies, or documentaries, but in this case, it kind of worked against the show because it hindered people's decision to appear on the show. I do wonder of an alternate reality in which Hansen did not leak that the documentary was being made, or better yet, an alternate reality in which the girls were presented with the idea that Hansen could be booted from the show if they agreed to be on it. After all, their stories are far more powerful than the predator hunter that lost against Onision. Part of me wonders if the producers failed to realize that they need the girls more than they need them. I mean, considering the fact that the documentary is based around a YouTuber and has a focus on YouTube as a platform, it would be weird if they didn't feature any actual YouTubers. After nearly 3 months of back and forth with the producers, I told them that I would do the interview. I figured if it was any other documentary asking me to interview on a topic that I've already covered on my channel, I wouldn't decline. So why would I refuse here? Every answer kept leading me to the hate that I would ultimately receive from people due to the reputation of the show. It felt kind of lame to simply say no because, people are gonna be mean to me, but that was a valid and stressful concern. So one of the amendments that I had them do for my release was to ensure that I would not be in any promotional materials. This was so I could be in control of my own narrative, so I could be the one to tell people that I'm on the show and be prepared to deal with the potential backlash on my own terms. Unfortunately, they leaked the first episode to some YouTubers and a screenshot with my face ended up on social media, which kind of sucked because I was just about done with the project that I had been working on for the past month and wanted no distractions from it. The producer did apologize and she even said she would make sure that I wouldn't appear in any more promo materials after I also ended up in the New York Post, which was nice of her, but I don't really care at this point. Go ahead and use my name, I'm not ashamed. I just didn't want people to find out the way they did, but hey, what's done is done. Also, I know it wasn't her doing, so what would I even get out of being mad? Ultimately, I just wanted people to understand my decision before grabbing that pitchfork. Wonder what it's like to watch this video in the future, like what will be the perception, right? Because as of right now, I'm trying to express how much it stressed me. And also I wanted to clean it up with all that context. Like what you guys just heard is pretty much the TLDR of my live stream. And also in my live stream, I had some cervezas and, with beer and anxiety. Some of you might know what that combination will do to a person. And a lot of it was kind of me like just stressed and anxious. And towards the end, I got a little deep and emotional. So I didn't want to just have that up on my channel. So I figured, you know what, let me clean it up and give you guys a little bedtime story. Anyways, as we heard earlier this year, Chris Hansen had pitched the idea, allegedly, I don't fucking know how that goes, but apparently Chris Hansen pitched the idea of a documentary to Discovery ID about Onision. And that's as much as we knew. Everybody found that out. And he was like, I didn't sell a show. I didn't really understand how someone sells a show. So I like to say he pitched it because it doesn't make sense to sell it like a show. Like, how do you sell
the rights to the show?
But it's not his show. Like he doesn't own Onision's story, So,
no, but he's still like the rights to use all of his. I mean, he probably licensed the rights to use the Have a Seat with Chris Hansen footage.
He very much could have done that. That's
that's my interpretation of selling the rights to the Onision story, is selling the rights to his Chris Hansen footage.
Sure.
Which I don't think they paid for anyone else's videos, but they probably paid for his.
Very possible. That's very possible. However, the main perception was that Hansen was in control of it, right? What was not clear was whether the stories of Onision's victims were going to be told or not. And this was a very confusing part to even myself. I did a live stream. I double checked because everybody was calling me a hypocrite, right? Because as some of you may have seen, I did an interview with this documentary, and in August, I stood firmly against this documentary because I was under the impression that it was going to be telling the stories of Sarah, Billy, or other people that did not consent to it because that's what they were saying, right? And they hadn't even approached me yet. As time went on, it became clear that they were not going to use the stories. Like Repzion did a live stream talking about how they were pitching to him, like they had approached him and saying that, hey, if you want to be on it, we guarantee you that the victim stories will not be told. You know, he was doing a live stream talking about, like, I was approached by the time he did that live stream, but I had not decided yet. And this was like in September or something. So I don't even think I agreed until like October. And I'm not sure if people are blurring the lines because they want to see me as a bad person. I think that's what it is. And it's hard. And if it's not, then it's hard to tell because the way that people are labeling me as a liar, a hypocrite, all this stuff. And I have never said I'm not doing this documentary. I guess essentially the way I kind of weighed it is if somebody were to come at me, say for my Marilyn Manson or Dee Antwoord coverage, and say, hey, I'm directing this documentary on this. Would you like to interview? Because you like did a very intensive and heavy coverage on this. I guess the only difference between this and that, I ended up seeing as if, well, this documentary was already leaked and it's got a terrible reputation. People are going to shit on me. I give my insight as someone that covered it. So what would deter me? People shitting. I knew people were going to shit on me, of course. I knew that people were going to be terrible to me, of course. And this is the thing that I actually told the producers. I went back and forth in the release form. I said, please don't include me in any like promotional thing. As time went on, somebody told me, hey, there's a rumor that you're on it. I'm like, what? That's weird. So I don't know how people are finding out. And then there's like the leak. Like I apparently the first episode was leaked to some YouTubers. I was like, what the fuck? Okay. So like, you know, it did me sideways in some way, right? But what am I supposed to do? I got to face this forward. Like, okay, well, people gotta find out anyway. I just want to be the one to tell people first. And it sucks that they took that away from me, but it also
you should have just let off with, hi, I'm Edwin. I made no money from being on this show. They didn't do the thing that I was against. And, what's the other one? There was another one.
Liar, hypocrite, and sellout. Those are the three that I've seen, at least. And I don't remember lying or being hypocritical about anything. I mean, I stood against it when it was under the guise of, like, it was going to go against the girl's wishes, which it was made clear to me that it wasn't. And the thing that disappoints me is that people, like, don't care to, like, even ask me. Like, nobody asked me, like, why did you do this? If I showed you, and which I want to go over the replies right now on my Twitter, because people just want to judge me. And it's like I like to think that as someone that's like covered like heavy sensitive topics and stuff, like all the people that I've covered and talked about in my videos, they all have my phone number. If people want to be mad at me because I partook in a documentary that talked about Onision, then you can be mad at me for that and say that I sold my soul or whatever, or sold out. I don't really understand what selling out means, because I definitely didn't get paid. Like, if I got paid though, I don't even know. I wish I got paid. I don't know why people should be mad at that. They took up my whole day, like interviewing me for like setting up their cameras and shit. But anyways,
the reason I said if I was invited, I wouldn't have done it, is that for the most part, I was kind of just sick and tired of these girls getting milked for views. And I think that's what Chris Hansen did for a while. I think Chris Hansen milked these girls for all they're worth. And then thought, let's do a TV show because that'll really help their case, when it wasn't. There
was a lot of anxiety going into it, you know? Like, obviously everybody like didn't like the idea of it. And part of me felt like, okay, because I was literally weighing the options. I was like, what are the cons? Like, am I really not doing this because of the terrible things people are going to say to me? Like, really? I don't know. I feel like I would at least offer something, hopefully, that's new, because it's going to happen no matter what. The documentary is going to happen no matter what. And especially since there's no YouTuber that was in it except for myself, I think maybe at least as far as I know. If you want to shit on me all you want, great. But at least taking into consideration that I did my best to talk about how Chris Hansen took advantage of people, and just was generally kind of a piece of shit. Here's the thing, guys. Nicholas DeOrio does not agree with it, and that's okay. Repzion gave it a 10 out of 10. I thought that was very generous. I gave it
very generous. That's like almost like.
After a second viewing, I maybe even think my 8 out of 10 was generous, but maybe a 7.5. I like
4.
It's casual.
A 4. Dude, if you call it anything above 4, you're a liar.
I think that it's casual viewing. It's pretty interesting.
All right, and when your part was a 6, everything else was a 4. How's that?
My part is a 6. What the fuck, dog? Because they barely put me in it.
Yeah, dude.
I don't want to sound unreasonable, but at the same time, it's like I think people are being like rude to me. I don't want to take people's shit going into this new year. Did Edwin really say he was gonna be in it? No, I never said I was gonna be in it or that I wasn't gonna be in it. I never said I was even offered to be in it because that was never even a question. So like I never omitted anything either. Like that's the thing. Wasn't he criticizing the documentary being placed in the documentary being made in the first place? When people were saying this to me, like I almost felt crazy. I was like, everyone's fucking like saying insulting shit to me. And I went back and rewatched my live stream from August when I criticized Shiloh because she said that she wasn't on it, even though she is on it. So I was like, oh shit, look at that. You lied to all your girls. Huh, interesting. Do you know that I was on the New York Post today? I know
you're in the newspaper?
This,
oh, you're kidding. If I go get my fucking newspaper, you're in it?
Oh shit, you get the local news. You can get a physical copy.
Oh, I could have got, I don't know how many days ago it was.
I think this is like today or something.
Is it?
Big Money needs to send it to me.
I might be able to see if I can get a copy of that for you.
This says, Onision in real life. This show will follow Greg Jackson, who's known as the character Onision. I'm like, why am I on here? I'm not Onision. Like,
dude, I can't believe Greg Jackson has fucking blonde hair now.
Yeah, and he's fucking skinny as shit. Yeah, it's me. People were replying to me, sell out and all this shit. And it's like annoying because like I'm out here trying to promote this fucking video that I've been working my ass off on. Like I bully bullies, which he deleted the tweet. And I'm cool. Don't worry. I don't judge you. I think you're still in chat. But he like deleted. I'm more interested in why you're in the Onision documentary. I'm like, okay, bro. Can you at least not tweet it and me promoting something I've been working like my baby? Like, can you like save like, bro, I'm about to fucking push a baby out of my pussy, bro. Can you wait? And this girl says, good point. Did Edwin really say he was gonna be in it? Wasn't he criticizing the documentary being made? I'm super confused. And then he posted another like, this is just instigating. Like she's asking him a question. She's like, did he say he was gonna be on it? I don't know. Let me just post a screenshot of him like on the show. Proof that he's on it. Yes, guys, I am on the show. This is a screenshot of me being on the show. Okay. And then she says, bro, what? That is so weird. I like Edwin too, and I hope he explains why he flipped on the documentary, since this is kind of hypocritical. And then this girl says, he's a sellout. I don't want to jump to that conclusion. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. It would be extremely out of character for Edwin to do something like that. I think Edwin should explain why he changed his mind. So by the way, Heather, I don't think you're watching, but shout out to you. I appreciate that. And this girl says, there is no excuse. None of this was his story to be a part of. Really disappointed to see him on there when there are other victims who refuse to do the show. But like, here's the thing, like a documentary doesn't require somebody to be on it if their story's not gonna be told. You know what I mean? So it's like, they're literally reaching to make me look bad. And that's what I mean is annoying. It gets to a position where I look at this and I was actively ignoring it, even though it obviously bugs me a lot. It does annoy me. And I didn't want to like respond to it because like, no matter what I say to people on Twitter is like, and I don't even know how Nick is one that engages a lot with people on Twitter. Like I had to train which I understand because I had to train myself.
Well, I'm way more toxic and I'm expecting way more toxicity. For you, not so much, I don't think. People
just, when they make up their minds, they make up their minds. And look, people, 3 likes, people agree with her. People.
You have to assume some people just either don't have the whole story or some people aren't, they're not used to making like arguments involving YouTube drama, or some people, and maybe not in this person's case, are just genuinely dumb.
If I were to say Sammy here is genuinely dumb, this is the kind of instance that she would be like, wow, Edwin called me dumb. Oh my God, he's so mad. LMFAO. There would be so many ways.
And that's your problem because you're less toxic than me. The people I call dumb just go, Nick, that asshole, he called me dumb again. And I kind of just get away with it.
Yeah, but they get obsessed with it, bro. I've seen people get obsessed with it. You fucking like saying shit over there about them.
Yeah, but it's funny because I can just keep saying stupid shit. Like nobody's ever expecting me to be nice to people.
To me,
it's always graceful when I'm nice to people.
I don't like that energy. That distracts me.
Why don't you tell them what you were allowed to talk about? You didn't mention that yet.
I think I did. Well, no,
you didn't. You didn't mention it yet. What were you allowed to talk about during the fucking interview?
Here's the thing that I was guaranteed that would be aired. Guaranteed. They said that they would air the part where I don't know. I mean, obviously they're not going to air like a 20 to 25 minute rant that I went on. And it wasn't even a rant. It was very well articulated. I think it was probably the best articulated part of my whole like interview. Me talking about like Chris Hansen.
You were allowed to shit talk Chris Hansen in the documentary. That's obviously not the documentary that you were talking about when you were shitting on it. They're literally allowing you to go on and shit talk Chris Hansen. The whole chat had no idea that you were allowed to do that. I'm telling you, you lead with two things. One, they got me on record and they're putting it in the documentary that I'm shitting on Chris Hansen. Two, they didn't pay me. And your whole timeline is less toxic. 100%. That's all you had to say.
You know what? You're fucking right, dude. I'm gonna fucking make a tweet right now. I understand.
Oh, I got it. All right, I got it. Ready? All right.
Yeah. Oh,
ready?
Boy.
This is the perfect tweet. Hello, gamers.
Oh my god. Hey, gamers. Oh fuck. See, I don't even know how you put yourself in that position to say that shit.
Yo, Edwin, please start the tweet with "Hey, gamers."
I can't, bro.
Please do it. Please do it, dude. It'll make my 2020. Please start it, dude. Chat. One in the chat if Edwin needs to start this with "Hey, gamers."
The tweet after this one, I will start with "Hey, gamers." I don't think I can do this one.
God damn it, Edwin. This is really important. You don't understand the severity of what you're doing.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. In a different way. And with my Christmas wishes for you to open with "Hey, gamers." It's gonna have people confused.
We're so
I can't post a tweet that starts at whack and like
that's not
has
whack.
no
Dude, it would be incredibly poggers if you just put "Hey, gamers."
Bro, that will be so poggers and awesome.
Okay, fuck it.
I don't fully realize what's going on here. I just want to let you guys know that.
I think this is a pretty good tweet, guys. Hey, gamers. As some of you have heard, I was interviewed for a documentary on Onision. Apparently, I was in a newspaper too. What the fuck? Anyways, I vetted them thoroughly, and they are not using victims' stories without consent. Lastly, they will include my rant on Chris Hansen. Smiley face. And I put the
Get a
picture.
winky face. It needs to be a wink.
Okay.
Change the word
right.
Chris to grift.
Bro. And I put the screenshot of me being on the newspaper. That's pretty good, right, guys?
I think it's great.
Thank you. Hell yes.
I didn't like the documentary. I watched it. However, Edwin didn't do anything wrong. I think if anyone was there, it's good he was there because he actually knows what he's fucking talking about. And when they're asking, like, Chris, what's going on? Chris doesn't know anything. So it's like, I'm proud of Edwin. Go, Edwin.
Chris probably smells like an old man.
Okay, I just want to make sure I can post this tweet. Everybody's agreeing. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I get the approval. Okay, everyone says yes. The only thing, obviously, doesn't fit enough characters is, yes, I was not paid. To be completely clear, here's the thing. There was a streamer that's, I noticed he's picking fights with Augie that said, homeboys got paid. And I'm like, what the I did not
dude, that
fucking
guy's
get paid.
Fucking brain dead. That guy made a whole video mad that
Yes, he did a fucking 3-hour live stream, and I skimmed through some of it, like, bro, where the fuck are you pulling this out of your ass? And he's like, well, you know, I might be wrong. Maybe he got paid through exposure. I'm like, what the fuck? You think exposure's gonna pay me out like
exposure? Wow, dude, you got all the exposure of a brand new streaming service that's probably not going to be able to compete with Netflix.
Yeah, you think that's
dude,
gonna buy me a
bad
fucking sandwich,
ass,
bro? I'm still gonna be a fucking starving kid,
Well,
bro. Fuck off.
Dude, surprise, you're in the worst
I just
documentary on a
wanna
streaming
say,
service
like-
nobody has.
Well, like, I also want to say that, like, any person who's like, oh, this is selling out, like, you went into it with the knowledge that, like most people weren't going to, like, love this. We've had discussions, and I was like...
I knew I was gonna be shot.
Yeah, so I don't think it's selling out when you go into it and you're like, hey, guys, I have an unpopular, like, I'm doing something that I know most people won't agree with.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the same as selling out.
I told quite a few people, but I didn't get to tell everybody that I would have wanted to before the leak came out. But I told Nick and Shannon before the leak did come out. And like I was nervous, I was anxious. I wasn't like, hey guys. It was weird because there's a lot of anxiety going into it. I wasn't like, oh hell yeah, if all that I got to lose is people judging me online, I don't wanna be that kind of guy that's like, oh my god, I'm not gonna do it because of this, right? And like
someone in chat wrote, he's being super serious when he starts the message with "Hey gamers," like in response to your tweet.
Ooh, this is exciting. Somebody already fucking jumped on my neck. Nick already came at them. They said, so you're saying, first of all, I always go back to this, and this might sound stupid to some people, but as someone that English is second language, how can people not fucking use it right? So you're saying on January 4th when it airs, whenever your episode airs, I don't have a specific episode, so I don't know what the fuck. See, people are just fucking reaching to fucking shit on me. People want to learn more and go to your channel and watch your videos and give you sponsor / ad money. I'm just saying, I don't care if you did it, to be honest, just saying. What the fuck are you just saying?
Well, that's not how. That's
Does
not
this
how
sentence make sense?
anything works, though.
When it airs or whenever your episode airs, when people won't watch it to learn more and go to your channel and watch your videos giving you AdSense / sponsor money, I'm just saying, I don't care if you did it, to be honest, just saying. What is that last sentence? I'm just saying, I don't care if you did it, to be honest, just saying. Bro, are you
they're trying to make it like I'm not attacking you, but also they're being like, this is a fallacy in their eyes, even though it doesn't really logically check out, in my humble opinion.
Is that not the cringiest fucking attitude though? Like that, I hate that shit. This is why I hate Twitter. Like, people don't understand things, and this is why I wanted to address it when I'm a live stream, and I didn't like that it leaked out before I could do it myself, right? I'm just saying, if my video, my most recent video on Onision, which has 130,000 views, 100 whatever, gets to 200,000 views after the first episode, holy shit! I will guarantee, again, I will fucking donate $100 to charity.
My biggest thing is I feel like people wouldn't be as upset, one, if the documentary was already out and they watched it, but two, my biggest thing, and me and you have talked about this, is that the PR the documentary did by not talking openly to the survivors, to the victims, and just having open and honest communication with everyone, they fucked themselves up. Because literally, they marketed it so terribly. They let rumors come through, and they never like talk to people about like, we won't include anything that you guys tell us not to.
The fact that people learned about the documentary through Chris Hansen alone built a huge line of distrust alone, right? So it's like, you know, and I like to think of it like a parallel world where, like, what if they had said to victims, hey, would you like to do this if we take Chris Hansen out of the equation? Obviously, Chris Hansen has some pull with like different generations, but like it would have had a stronger effect with the victims. So I think Chris Hansen is a big reason for the distrust, in my opinion, right? So like, who knows? Maybe a different universe, they could have had the victims.
I don't think that Chris Hansen is a draw anymore. I truthfully don't believe Chris Hansen has the appeal. And one of the reasons I say that is because he's not in the title of the show. It used to be like Chris Hansen to Catch a Predator, and like Hansen is Predator, and his name used to have that appeal of like, oh, it's that guy. Now you don't see his name being next to
Chris Hansen's a little bitch.
Okay, Ashlee. What's up, bro?
Oh my god, Ashlee really came through.
Ashlee Lillie in the show, by the way, guys. If you're not subscribed to Ashlee Lillie, look up Ashlee Lillie on your YouTube search bar. Find her YouTube channel. She's been fucking
also, really quick on the topic of the Chris Hansen thing and the show, whatever. I just want everybody to know, I talked to Edwin for like multiple days in a row, and I was telling him like, hey, ask them these questions, make sure this, and that, like everything that could possibly happen in like a worst case scenario. I was like, make sure that they tell you this is not what's going to happen, so you have it on record. So this is like not a bad thing. Like, Edwin's done his research. He's vetted all of this. Like, this is not like, I think it'll be okay.
I forgot to update Ashlee when I ended up saying that I did do it, but I talked to Ashlee up until that point. Like, you know, she was like, we were talking back and forth. I was telling her about the stress and everything. Because again, like, dude, like, I knew I was going to get shat on. Like, you think I want to walk in this, but like, at the same time, if the biggest con is me, is literally people saying, oh, wow, you're a sellout. If that's literally the biggest con of me doing this, why?
No. I think that's such a stupid fucking argument, and part of me wishes I was on Twitter so I could fight people about this, because selling out is giving over to a popular opinion that goes against your ethics and morals. Exactly. Selling out is doing something popular pretty much because it's popular. You knew this was not a popular decision, but you still made it because you believed you had something that you needed to say, and that is brave as fuck. So anyone who's telling you like, oh, this is selling out, they don't know the definition of selling out, and they should learn to like, they should know that before commenting.
I think people are so like set on, I'm sorry. People are so set on like saying like, oh, people got paid to be on this. And it's like, no, none of you got paid. Right? Like, that's fucking stupid.
I mean, I've only seen episode 1.
Well, it's also like,
I've been guaranteed. They're going to air the part where I give some real commentary on Chris Hansen, okay? I'm being very hopeful, of course. I feel like by saying this, I'm setting an expectation high. Hopefully it gets to live up to it. But at the same time, it's like, even if I didn't air too much of me saying anything against Chris Hansen, something is better than nothing. I like to think of that, you know, because if I wasn't on it, Chris Hansen like gets to look like a fucking hero, and he's not a hero.
Well, just so everyone knows, it's also like Edwin doesn't have like on your videos you have like a final choice of the edit and final choice of like what gets in, what doesn't. With this, you sat in a room, you weren't paid, you gave your like, you answered questions, you gave your expertise, you did what you could, but it's not going like you're not in charge of what they show and what they don't show. So like it's not on you. Well, I don't like people saying that you're a sellout. I also like, as someone who's seen the first episode, I don't like the documentary by any means. There's stuff that like happened in it, but does that fall on Edwin?
Okay, anyways, I do want to say thank you to everybody for being kind to the tweet. Obviously, like this was not an easy thing to tackle. From what I was being told, I didn't feel like other people that I already interviewed could have tackled things that I could have possibly tackled, considering there were no other fucking YouTubers. And I feel like if you're doing a documentary on a YouTuber, at least one YouTuber had to do it, right? And like, you know, you could say that I was the dumb YouTuber that took it. Okay, sure, I don't care. But like, I feel like someone had to take it. There is a movie, Valentine's Day or some shit like that. It's on Hulu, and they literally steal the Mars Argo story straight up, and they make a horror movie out of that. And people didn't make as much of a stink as they're making out of this. But like, they're literally making it, like stealing it.
What?
Like, if you watch that movie?
Yeah, they just swap the characters out.
Yeah, for real. They literally get characters that look like Poppy, that look like Mars Argo, that look like Titanic Sinclair.
What the fuck?
Not Poppy, not Mars Argo, not fucking Titanic Sinclair were notified or agree with this. Yet it happened. And at the end of the day, it's like, at least the documentary had the decency to not fucking overstep on those toes, right? But like, if they did, they probably could have. And like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna get sued? Like, who wants to go through that shit, you know? I do want to watch that one time on stream and like react to it. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I think that Onision is like a very big buzzword in the commentary community, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's something that everybody's talked about. So there's a bunch of people, I can't speak for the Onision survivors, but I know that like for a fact with the Dobby Vanity survivors, there are so many people who are so obsessed with speaking for us and who are obsessed with talking about our situation for us and being super, super involved and thinking they know a lot of things that they know nothing about. So whenever people go on Twitter
really
and they
weird.
say, oh, it's so fucking weird. So when people go on Twitter and they say, you know, certain things that lean towards the show being a negative thing, obviously all of those like stands, if you will, for the survivors are going to like rage about it. And it's going to be this giant thing. And I don't know. I think that it got obviously a huge negative, you know, buzz around it for multiple reasons. 1, Onision sucks. 2, Chris Hansen fucking sucks. 3, survivors were posting about how it sucks. So everybody was like, oh, this is awful.
Which,
yeah.
And I get, you know, and I get, but it's like, I don't want to take this shit. Like, I don't deserve to take this shit after. I know the amount of work that I put in my videos, and like to see someone like, you know, I did this video that I put my heart and soul into this fucking Marilyn Manson, and someone's like, other people are calling me a sellout, and this person's like, it's like, why are you sellout? Blah, blah, blah. They don't know what they're talking about, right? Like, why are people saying, like, and this person's like, by the way, this person literally like has 1 follower. They like, I blocked them because they're so like annoying. They're literally just must have made their, I don't know if they made their account to troll me, but like they were tweeting me sellout, and they're like, he's not a sellout because of this video. He's in the Onision documentary when he knew that the girls didn't want any part in it. Right. And the girls are not in it. That's the thing. He claimed to support them. Clearly not. How do I not support them? This is what you were saying, Ashlee. Like, people love to speak for other people, like as if like they know more. And it's so fucking aggravating. This is why I hate Twitter, because you guys can see that I'm annoyed. Like, you guys can see that I'm annoyed. So just like when I was read it, I said, not because of this, I was mocking. I'm just replying to unrelated tweets because I wanted people to know that he's a sellout interviewing for a documentary. I said, don't get too triggered if I interviewed over another topic that I cover on my channel, right? And then someone's like, snake. And I said, that's a gross response to valid criticism when they're victims of assault, which, by the way, there's never been any accusation of assault. So that's kind of weird. Are not okay with their stories being told in the documentary that you decided to be interviewed by said documentary. That's gross. And I said, please excuse my ignorance, but exactly how is a sellout a valid criticism? Nothing. You know, so it's like people want to throw like stones, but they don't want to back it up. And then that bothers me. It's like, this is why I hate Twitter. Like nothing.
Well,
nothing.
get off of Twitter. Just get off of Twitter. It's
I know. Look,
those people are looking for the reaction, and like as hard as it is to not give it to them, like you have to not give it to them, because what they're looking for is for you to be like, you're wrong, and so they can be like, oh, see, he can't take criticism, I was offering this and this, and it was like, no, you were being rude.
Well, exactly.
If I was actually like legit triggered the way I was, that is not the space for me to be in.
Yeah.
And so if I have a situation where I broke down that way, and I personally, like, while I was doing it, I felt so irrational, because when I say I was crying, I was like sobbing on my couch. I don't know why. It should not have bothered me as much.
Understand.
And I literally thought right there, like, if this is a reaction to something that I know logically should not bother me, but I can't stop myself, I need to go. And at the end of the day, Twitter is not necessary. It really isn't. On Twitter, it takes less than a minute to make a new account to just shit on people. And people have 5 different accounts, 5 different alts, because they'll continue to send you shit. And they do it to me. And like, there's a group of people who will do it so prevalently to me, Edwin, and like pretty much everyone I contact with. And so I literally looked at it and I was like, why am I on Twitter? I do not need to be doing this.
It's true.
And also, like, again, with my PTSD, it was one of those things where I realized, if this isn't healthy, but I keep putting myself back into it, that's on me. I can't blame other people for triggering me. It's like what the fuck, you know?
In no way comparative, but like it really puts into perspective, because like the person specifically was like, I can't find the reply, but basically they were like, LMFAO, he blocked me. Like they like take a joy out of like, you know, getting on people's nerves. And it's weird that they get a rise out of that. Like they're like, oh hell yeah, I'm so fucking excited to the idea that like they annoyed you, right? And it's fucking weird and twisted. It's like
Twitter is the place where somebody will harass you, and then you'll respond to it, and they'll be like, I can't believe you'd be so mad that I was harassing you, and then they'll like make a bit about it.
And I just want to get perspective, because like all of what we're saying right now is a big reason why I was like be straight up, like I was insecure about making this tweet. I was like, it does get to a person. Like as a creator, you do get desensitized to a certain degree, but like every now and then you can't help yourself. It might get to you, right? So like I can't predict, and that's why I wanted, like, that's why I am grateful for you guys. I'm like, okay, how many people actually support this tweet before I write it, right? You guys heard that. That was like a true sense of insecurity, if I'm being real. Like I'm like, fuck, should I post this? Because like, dude, like people already have this terrible perception. People are shitting on me for whatever reason. It's like, what do people that want to hate me think that I'm gaining? Like I don't really see it. Like I'm a liar, I'm a hypocrite, sellout. How?
I mean this with my, like, all my heart. It is so much easier being online without Twitter. It is so much better not existing in the landscape that is Twitter, because so often I would have found myself just like scrolling through and being like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Like, oh, this person, like, you're fed so much information so quickly that it just becomes a lot. And I also saw someone in the chat say, like,
have the girls like came back and spoken on that again now that the show is like not in like going in that direction? Have they like doubled down on it, or are they just like staying quiet? I'm not even saying that to like start anything. I'm just genuinely curious.
You know, like I assured them. I said, look, because the thing that they were concerned about, like literally up until I told them, even though it was already public, because like I said, Repzion had made it public and it was already talked about since September that their stories were not going to be covered. And I completely understand the distrust and everything, you know? But like, I reassured them, like, I saw the first episode and they assured me, they guaranteed me and everything. They were not going to be talked about. That's what I mean.
It's like, because everybody's seemingly mad because the girls were like, they're using our stories without our consent. But now the show is like, no, we're not.
If we want to talk about like fairness and unjustness, like the girls definitely ganged up on Regina too in a very unfair way. Because like, if you think about it, like nobody ever spoke against Shiloh. And she, like, not only did she do the show, but she lied about it. And she shat on me and other YouTubers. And nobody ever spoke out against her. Yet, when she was caught out for lying, she was barely called out. Like, if you literally look at it, all the tweets and everything, she was called out a lot less than Regina. Oh, well, I guess that's that, right? So if we're looking at it objectively speaking, like, yeah, sucks for fucking Regina. Poor girl. Like, she's got feelings too, you know? Like, if we really want to be objective, it's really, like, what's going on is nobody's fucking clean. Ain't nobody clean. Like, nobody that goes through shit like this is fucking 100% clean, and that's okay. But, like, I hate the shit that people are using fucking victims as a weapon against me now. I think that's fucking bullshit, because, like, at the end of the day, I communicated with people personally. If they have a problem, I would hope that I've been in touch with them privately.
No, that just goes back to people online talking for them. People are talking for them and speaking for them. And it's like, okay, well, you're not in the DMs talking to these people. And like, don't get me wrong. If for some reason there was like some Davi Vanity documentary and I told people, hey, I don't want a part of it, I'd be like a little bit like salty over people still doing it. But at the end of the day, if they weren't telling my story, then people couldn't really be mad for me because I would have nothing to do with it. But I can't put myself in their position because I'm not in that position. But that's the way that I try to kind of look at it. Like if that were the case, if they aren't being talked about and they aren't saying anything else against it and they're not, you know, going on Twitter sprees against you, then
there's only so much you can do, right?
I understand people not necessarily like giving you the benefit of the doubt full on. However, it's like you can't say the only reason you did it was to quote sell out, because it's one, that's not what selling out is, but two, it's a matter of like you are deeply involved in the story. You have talked about this for a very long time. You want to see it done right. And so you taking part of it, to me, states you wanted to be there to see it done right and to try to help it along. If they don't use that footage or if they don't like notice that, that's really lame. And you can clarify that. Like I personally would be making a video being like, this was my intention with doing this. You guys may not agree, but here it is, because otherwise people are just putting intentions onto you. But like, I don't know. I think the very idea that like you're a bad person for trying to make this as good as it could be, I don't agree with that. While I personally wouldn't have done it because obviously I didn't do it, it's a matter of like we can have different opinions, but I can still see the good in your decision.
I don't know. It's weird. Like the whole like concept of dehumanizing creators is really weird that people don't want to understand and grasp. To me, as someone that puts the amount of work that I do into my work and like how much I care, it does hurt, and it's stupid, and I know it's lame and it shouldn't do it, but like,
no, you're human.
No, to ignore. I don't think that's fair to say of yourself. One, our brains are naturally wired to like seek out the negative and like internalize it. So like the nastiest thing that you see about yourself, your mind is already looking for a way to validate what you already thought. So it's just like, I'm gonna latch on to that. But it's also a matter of like people, when they see someone on the screen, and I know I've personally done this as well. It's like, that's a concept. They're not a real person. But then when you talk one-on-one, it's just like, oh no, there's like, that's just a human. There's no bravado there. There's no, like, why am I assuming the worst of this person? And a lot of it's just like vibes or how someone talks, or like maybe they just don't like how your hair looks. And it's not really great. And you are allowed to feel however you feel and to let those feelings manifest within you. But what you're not allowed to do is internalize that, because you are a great person and you don't deserve that.
I feel like it's so hard with like the whole COVID thing too, because we've all been inside for so long, and I feel like people are so just like tense, and so it's so easy for people to like go off even more so now than ever, like online, and just say whatever they want because they don't care. They don't see the human behind the computer. They just think, oh, I'm talking to this person.
I definitely go to that a lot because like I do feel like that's definitely a big factor. Like for as long as I've been on the internet, I've never seen people be this vicious. Something that I found interesting about my, I don't know what to call them, my detractors, my haters, whatever, the people that didn't like the fact that I was on the show, you know, to put it simply, is that once they found out that the story is not stepping on any victim's toes, you know, they couldn't use that against me, then they try to really go for that, well, how much are you getting paid? Ooh, what are you doing with this money? And it's like, I'm not getting paid, but it's interesting that you assume that, you know? There's a difference between saying, did you get paid? And how much did you get paid? As if you know something that I don't. And then once they find out that I didn't get paid, well, they say, I'm not wrong. You actually did get paid in exposure. That's like saying, hey, draw me something and I'll retweet you as a payment. Not to mention, and I thought of this while I was editing the live stream, but it could be argued that my appearance could add exposure to the documentary. I mean, I would hate to make that argument because it sounds arrogant, but still, you know, maybe some people are like, oh, Edwin's in it. Maybe it's not so bad. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, I didn't think it was that bad. You know, I think it shows promise. Obviously, I would say it's like more casual viewing, and I only seen episode 1. I'm not in it that much in episode 1. So once I'm in it more, it'll probably get better anyways. I don't know, guys. We'll see what happens, but I'm staying optimistic. In the end, the fact that it's gonna exist, I don't think is a bad thing in the universe. You know, I don't know. We'll see. I know Nicholas DeOrio is gonna go against it, so that's gonna be interesting. But I told the producer that I could possibly do a video review if they gave me all 3 episodes. Otherwise, you know, all I can say about the first episode is, yeah, it's not that bad. It's casual viewing. It's not gonna blow your mind, but I don't think it's terrible. You know, it would work in their favor because I'm giving them a review, hopefully a positive one, you know, ahead of time, so people will want to watch it. See, this is what I mean. Me being a part of it could be a good thing for them. I could be giving them exposure. What is this? How is exposure to me? Man, my detractors are weird. Small brain, guys. Thank you all for supporting me. I really appreciate it. Thumbs up the video if you haven't already, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.